Good afternoon. I'm really thrilled to be here today because I get to do what I love to do. I love to talk, and I love to teach. And what do I get to teach about today? Talking. View before you a happy woman. All right, now, there's a joke in our family and among my friends that says most people who have children begin to save for college. In our family, the suggestion was, given my orientation towards child development and learning and language, that what we should do is save for psychiatry. That living with a child development language specialist had its risks. But as you will see, they actually turned out pretty well. Alrighty. Every culture shares a common rule system for communication. And that common rule system for communication is language. A word that we use rather casually, but that has enormously significant connotations. And we'll talk more about that because language connects each of us to one another. It connects us to our experiences, it connects us to our past, and to our future. There's a word and a meaning for every word. There's a word for every sight, for every sound, for every movement, for every feeling, for every thought. And as you'll see, language goes far beyond just the sounds, but to the expressions and the intent and the meanings. Language is a code. And it is that part in this complex patchwork quilt that we call early childhood development. It is the thread that binds it all together. Now, that particular piece up there is a tribute to my friend. We've been friends now for more than 50 years, which is remarkable because I haven't experienced that birthday yet. You doubt me? Who has become a quilt maker. She expresses herself in her art. I express myself in language. Now, language grows along with you, all right? Learning to talk is child's play. You just listened very carefully, I'm sure, to Susan's representations about the importance of toys and the importance of play. Do you know what children do when they're playing? They talk about what they're playing. And what they can play influences how they talk. So years and years ago, I was taught to watch a child play. And once I could see the level at which the child was playing, the way in which he or she was playing, I knew at what comfortable level to address that child. And it makes it so that all little kids like to talk to me because I can figure out the level at which they are comfortable talking. Play is exploration. You don't need something fancy. Play is creativity. Play is problem solving. And I'll show you that this is quite simple. I have my notes before me. It's my version of a security blanket. But you see, these notes just became a telescope. And if I were a little boy who'd been watching too much Spidey, or, God help us, Pirates of the Caribbean, you see my notes? They just became a sword. And now my notes have become a hat. And I can walk with my hat. Years ago, my boys got a gift. Big box came with 2 small boxes in it. Doesn't matter what the gift was. You know what they played with? The boxes. Because that allows them to create, to make things happen from the inside out. Play allows us to solve problems. It teaches us to take turns, which you need to have a good conversation. You've been in conversations with people who hog. No, play, you have to take turns or they won't play with you. Play teaches us about putting things in order. Play teaches us about negotiation. Not the kind of negotiation that you heard about earlier, where you negotiate with your child and when you do, the child wins the negotiation. But the negotiation between 2 kids for how do we share this moment? How do we solve this problem? How do we figure this out? And we do that with language. Play is supposed to be fun. It's a good time. And we talk when we do it. We talk about what we play. Now, after you play, and play doesn't mean the same thing for children that it does for us. For us, play is tennis or mahjong or the like, but for them, play is anything that allows them sensory motor experiences, social experiences, creative, dynamic experiences, and it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't have to cost a single thing. There's nothing sexy about this, but it's fun, and that's what play is supposed to be. And in play, we attach words, and we figure out who we are and how we are. And then what happens is that you get to school, and you'll see that in a few moments as well. Language is the vehicle that drives the curriculum. All of school is mediated by language. Everything that goes on in school. Teachers talk, children listen. Children question, teachers answer. Directions are given, instructions are followed. It's all about learning to read. When you are learning to read, you are cracking the language code, figuring out how to put sounds to those squiggles on the page. Everything in school is language-based, whether you realize it or not, and that includes what is now called phys ed. All right? That includes art and music. It is all mediated by language. And language is the bridge between the past and the present and the future. Think about it for a minute. I can't see you, so I don't know how good your skin is. But how many of you experienced the Civil War? Nobody? Okay. Any of you there for the Roaring Twenties? No? I bet there are a few who were with me in the psychedelic 60s. Oh, God, no. Oh, there's one. Thank you, sir. All righty. And any of you Gen X? Millennials? Oh, God, I'm alone in this room. All right, the point is, you may not have lived those times, but how do you know about them? Language is the mediating force for your knowledge of the past and your preparation for the future. Language is the bridge. Now, there is so much going on. Dr. Deek talked about neurology, and Dr. Taffel and Dr. Thompson talked about personality and confidence. See, I was raised that you don't call anybody who's got a doctor in front of their name by their first name. So the language code here is formality, but in reality, Joanne and Ron and Michael talked about these things. There's so much going on in a child. Everything is about the child's neurology. And an aspect of the neurology has been described to you by Joanne earlier today, the plastic fantastic brain, or the fantastic plastic brain. And then you all have personality styles. Who we are and how we are doesn't change inherently. It is adapted. But there's a lot going on. Your brain is wired in a certain way. You have a certain temperament. And then there are your sensory motor experiences. So much going on. How you move, how you plan your movements, what reactions you have, the strength of your muscles, your movements in play, your ability to sit up, all of how your body processes incoming information. And then, of course, there's your language system, which is the mediating force. We talk and we talk and we talk and we talk, and we talk about our experiences, we talk about our thoughts, we talk about our feelings. And then there's the social, emotional part of things. Joanne was right. We have to teach children to work on sympathy and empathy, on their social cognition, on how the different ways they interact with people, so that they have a knowledge of social conventions. What's the right way to talk to people in different situations for different purposes? And while your neurology is doing its thing and your little body is having its sensations and you're coming up with the words and you're connecting to the people who love you, you are also developing thinking skills. And language is a mediating force for how you think. There are so many thinking skills, but among the most crucial ones, following directions, understanding how to classify and organize information, inferring, drawing conclusions, all the things that we do with words to figure out the parts of a problem and to make the problem solution apparent, and that we can do it together. And then there's this thing called metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. With due respect to our late Mayor Koch, for years I've been stealing one of Ed Koch's lines. The notion of self-regulation, of watching yourself and determining how you are performing in a given situation, and then adjusting if you think you have to, making a judgment and then modifying, is what I refer to as the Ed Koch, how am I doing function of language. You've got to ask yourself in your head, how am I doing? Metacognition is being able to think about how you think, and to organize and to plan and to sustain your motivation to keep on going, to use strategies, to be flexible, and to learn how to make it happen. And you know one of the ways we do that? We talk to ourselves in our heads. And so when you have to figure something out, you have to be able to talk to yourself in your head. So if we bind the social emotional with the thinking skills, with the language, with the metacognition, with the sensory motor, with all of that neurology and our personality styles, we get one whole person. I'll give you a little story about the fellows you're about to see in some of these images. When my boys were 4, one of them came to complain about the other. He said, "Mommy, Rusty always wants to be with me. He never leaves me alone." And I said, "Well, I think he likes you a lot. You're his brother." He said, "But I need some time to be by myself." He's 4. All right. So I say, "Okay, Josh, tell me, what do you need the time by yourself for?" And he looked directly at me and he said, "I have to think." Good, I'm thinking, yay, Mommy. And he said, "And he always wants to play with me, and I don't have time to think." And I said, "Well, sweetie, what is it that you're thinking about?" I'm hoping for, the next great mind of the Western world. So I'm narcissistic, I'm a New Yorker. And I look at him and I said, "Well, what is it that you need to think about?" And with all the innocence of a 4-year-old, he said, "I need time to think about what I'm going to play." Aww. All of that goes on at once. How am I going to do it? Why am I going to do it? With whom I'm going to do it? How am I going to measure how I'm doing it? How does it feel? The reality is that 4 is not so young because it all happens so fast. I can't tell you how fast it happens. We know the research that Joanne was referencing this morning, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, because I want to excite and impress and inspire you, stealing words left, right, and sideways here, to react to this information. By the time a child is 2 years old, the vocabulary ranges from 2 to 300 words. By the time he's 10, it's tens of thousands of words. Children accumulate an enormous amount of information in a very short time, and I'm going to tell you how they do it. By the time a guy is between 2 and 3 years of age, he understands more than 500 words. They don't use as many, but they understand that many. And here's something else to think about, to go home and keep in mind. Between the age of 2 and 3, a youngster usually is able to listen to a story for 10 to 20 minutes. And you've already been taught how important it is to read to your children. Between 3 and 4, they can use 1,000 words. You shouldn't be able to count them anymore at that point. And you know what else they can do? They can tell a story. 4-year-olds can tell you a story. Not a great story, but they can tell you a story. And they can use language for any number of reasons. Between the age of 4 and 5, over 2,000 words. 2,000 words. Can you imagine the number of things that they can talk about? Now, between 4 and 5, they can talk about the past and the future. They can use all different kinds of sentences for all different kinds of purposes. And most importantly, they can use language to imagine. I wish, I think, or depending upon who you are, I think. All right. They can do lots with language, and I'm going to tell you where they get that language from. Once they learn to read, there's no stopping them, because it exposes you to the whole wide world. Then, this, what I've just described to you, is what you can hear and see. But, all right, my kids right now are in hiding because these are my sons. All right. Now, having ascertained that the psychedelic 60s meant something to me, you are manipulating that information linguistically, I'm sure, to have determined that they're not that age anymore. All right? You will see. Here's something to know. Don't underestimate them. Don't underestimate them. Why? Because words influence cognition, thinking, knowing, meaning, understanding from the very first months of life. I often say that children start learning to read the minute they hit the air. Do you know that they're doing studies now with babies who are between 2 and 4 months old? Amazing. Between 2 and 4, they can show that children are more responsive to and remember better the names that go with pictures if words are used instead of tones. So if I show a baby, 2 months old, 3 months old, a picture of a cup, and I attach the word cup to it, and I show the picture of a cup but attach to it, you know where the baby will do a better job of recognizing the cup? When there's a word attached to it. And that's before they can do much, much, much more than look cute, eat, sleep, wake you up in the middle of the night, and do other foul things for which, never mind. All right. Now, Joanne talked about windows. These windows are crucial. All right. You don't want to miss a child's opportunity to hear the language that he is going to learn to speak. You see those guys? We know that even just beyond this age, when they don't do much more than mama, dada, baba, research has shown us that between 6 and 9 months of age, they're not walking yet. They've just begun to sit up. What they can do is comprehend the names of many common objects. They can't say them at all, but they can recognize them. They're already storing information about the language to which they're being exposed. And how do they do this? They put the baby in a caregiver's lap, and they monitor eye-gaze behavior. Eye-gaze behavior, so that we know, you ready? It is rocket science, this language learning business. Language specificity is established by 6 months of age, and there's a crucial period between 3 and 7 months. After that, some of those little windows are not as wide open. Babies start to collect information about the sounds of the language to which they are being exposed. And they store that language in the motherese that we speak to them, the foolish, silly ways in which we talk. What Joanne was referencing earlier today is the work of Dr. Patricia Kuehl, and this ties us to the points that Susan was making, that everybody has been making. It's really a different challenge to be a parent today. But you know what happened when they put those little babies into these MEG machines that monitor their brain reactions, what activates and what doesn't? It takes a human being's voice, a human being's face, a human being's intimate interaction to make the brain light up. The babies don't respond to screen and simply audio. Doesn't light up. So the bottom line here, and I'll say it over and over and over again, is you can talk to your babies and they're going to understand a bit of what you're saying. They're not going to give you back any marvelous gay repartee. People used to say to me, they'd bring me their children because they weren't speaking. And then when the kids would start to talk, the parents would complain the kid never shut up. So what do you want? That's why you brought the kid to me. All right? They're not going to give you back a whole lot of gay repartee, folks. But they understand. They are beginning to store information about the language, and not just the sounds and the words, but the meanings and the intentions. And here's what's crucial. The more they know, the more you provide them with by talking, by interacting in person, the more they have to build on going forward. And you're not getting much back in the beginning. You are not getting much back. But we know early on that they are storing enormous amounts of information. There are sights and there are sounds, because language is not just about sights. For this I will pay grievously. All right? Look at that face. All right? Now, babies are constantly looking for language cues in the context, in the environment, and in the sound that they're hearing. We already know, these guys were about 18 months old in these pictures, and you see what they're doing? Yes, they were talking. Remember the part about psychiatry? I stopped counting the words at about 17 or 18 months. So I kept a book. So it's in storage up in the attic. So they don't know about it. So don't tell them. All right? So we know that at this stage, though they're not talking in sentences, babies are acquiring information about grammar. Remember, I told you that language specificity is established by about 6 months of age. But I want to point something out to you. Anybody talking in these pictures? But are they communicating? Yes. They have to have the underlying concepts of what language represents. Now, if you had the choice, with which one would you want to be? Striped shirt or yellow overalls? Absolutely, because the other one's about to have a fit. And we know that. We know that. He's in Ithaca now. If he's watching this, trust me, he's about to have a fit. We know that because we read facial expressions. That's part of language too. It's not just sounds and words. The other guy is excited. He sees something that he wants. Language learning relies on children's appreciation of communicative intention. What do I want to communicate to you? It relies on their sensitivity to joint attention, you and me together, and their desire to imitate and communicate. Social interaction is essential for natural speech and language learning. Social interaction. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this word language that I keep tossing around, that people keep tossing around here. I want you to recognize, if you will, because there's a person called a speech therapist, an underrated person in the whole wide world. She shows up in your school, but in fact, she's a language and speech pathologist if she's well trained. And I want you to understand that language, because most of the time you say language to people, they think French, German, Spanish, Italian. No. They're systems, communication systems, rule-based systems. And you learn the rules very, very, very early on. Do you know that most of what you're going to know about language, all the foundations are in by the time you're 4? Most of it is in by the time you're 4. What you've accumulated in those first 4 years is massive. Reading is superimposed on top of it. So language involves, yes, the sounds and the words and the sentences, and all of the vocabulary words that you know. I was thinking about that earlier because Michael used the word rubbish to mean not meaningful, not true, not so. But we know rubbish is a multiple meaning word. All right. Rubbish also means trash. It also means garbage. So the words that you choose and when you choose to use them influence how successful a language communicator you are. And knowing how and when and why we talk to people and how we listen to them. It is the whole system. It's the sounds and the words and the sentences and the vocabulary and the purposes and the intentions and our facility for sliding in and out of each. And you know what? It's by temperament, by neurology, by exposure. So, speech. Now, here in New York, we have a particular speech pattern, do we not? Acknowledge that to be true, please. I would like a show of hands for those of you who are from Brooklyn. Come on, don't be shamed. All right. So when I was growing up in Brooklyn, I heard a lot of people to talk like this. Now, this is the way they make fun of us in the media, because you don't meet a lot of people that actually talk like this. I had a cabbie the other day, actually, and Barbara Streisand in Funny Girl. But other than that, people don't usually talk like this. But this is how we get reference. This is speech, the noises that I make, the sounds that I make. But you recognize the speech sounds, even though I'm doing it in a funny way. All right? I could park my car. Some of these folks with whom I'm working today, Susan's from Boston, and but she speaks in a standard Northeast regional dialect, as do we all. The speech part is the sound production. How many of you have a child who loves you? I hope your children love you. All right. I told you that I was trained originally as a language and speech pathologist, and one of those two boys loved me. He loved me till he was 4. And my mother, or as my brother says, my mother was having what we call here in New York a conniption, because, you see, that's a different word. I don't think I use that word in Indiana. Was having a conniption, a fit, an anxiety attack, because she had spent all this money for my graduate education, and my kid loved me, and she wanted me to fix that. And so I explained to her that it was going to go away of its own accord. And certainly it did. It became I love you very, very, very quickly. We didn't have the discussion about the fact that his name is Russell, and which was a name over which we fought considerably, because R, S, and L are among the three hardest sounds to master in the English language. And I was thinking about all the money for the graduate education and decided that I couldn't have a kid walking around saying his name was Wathu. It was going to be a problem for me professionally. So you see, the speech is the sound production, and there's a normal pattern of development for it. Not only that, you understand what I mean, the words I'm using, because you can process my speech, no matter what accent I choose to use. The flip side of speech at an oral level, oral from your mouth, oral to your ears, is reading and writing and spelling. So you get the foundations that we establish for oral literacy become reading and writing, as I'll show you in a moment. And communication, that's what I showed you in the picture of. And what we intend, all the different reasons we talk to people, the reasons we listen, what our intention is in terms of interacting with them, and the different styles of interaction according to the situation. This amount of variability is generally learned quite naturally by most children. And you know how they learn it? Through you as the model, through your talking, through your interacting. And so we're talking. And then before you know it, look at us. We're in school. All righty? Or as they refer to it, big boy school. I knew this was going to bring a room full of parents, and I knew that these pictures were going to work. So if it connects for you, all the better. This is big boy school. So everything that we've been talking about, creativity, problem solving, neurology, confidence, anxiety, language, sense of self, all of that, now, all that socializing, all the learning, laid a foundation for going to school and being successful. Babies start learning to read, folks, the minute they hit the air. All right. And there they are with their books. And here's what we know, is the sounds become letters. And here's the part that is a challenge for people. English only has 26 letters. Unfortunately, it has a great deal more sounds. All right? Here's the best way to understand that. I want you to think of these 3 words. I know that when I say them, some of you will see the words in your mind's eye. Some of you will see the actual things that they represent. You ready? Bomb, comb, tomb. From the look of them, they should rhyme, but they don't. They all have different vowels. From the look of them, they should have a nice big b at the end, but they don't. So there are sounds that have to be represented by letters, and if you haven't been storing information because you haven't been talked to enough or read to enough in a dynamic human interaction, because we know that that's how their brains activate, then it's going to be harder for you. So talking leads to reading. Letters become words. All kinds of words. The words for the things we do, the words for the things we feel, the words for the things we say, the words for the things that we've experienced. Language is fascinating that way. You can have multiple meaning words, and then there are these great words called contronyms. If you're not familiar with contronyms are words that are their own opposites. All right? Think of the word trim. When you trim a Christmas tree, you add things onto it. And when you trim the fat off your, not your thighs, or when you trim the fat off a piece of meat, you are taking it, why do you think I'm standing behind the podium? They were feeding us. You take away. Contronyms, one word, complete opposite meanings. Storing what you hear becomes understanding what you read. The vocabulary, the sounds, and the story structure. How does the story start? Once upon a time. And every character in a story happens to be in a place at a time, known as the setting. All right? And he has a problem, because without a problem, the story doesn't move forward. And his attempts to move the problem, to solve the problem, keep that story going, till eventually there is a resolution. And do you know what? That story grammar, which is well written about in the literature, is the absolute truth for Clifford the Big Red Dog in the same way that it is for To Kill a Mockingbird. That story grammar, that sequence, place and time, character with a problem, plan to solve the problem, attempts, consequences, attempts, consequences, attempts, consequences. That would be what soap operas are about. And finally, a resolution. All right, except in soap operas, nobody tells the truth, and we're not even going to talk about what language does for truth-telling. All righty? All right, now, all you need is one friend, just one. Someone who gets you, someone who you get, who understands you, with whom you can talk and communicate and be appreciated fully. Now they're much older. Language and social emotional development. Social communication skills involve knowing how to talk the talk, knowing how to say the right thing to a person under specific circumstances for very particular reasons. Now, I used to be able to tell this story and get an absolutely fabulous laugh. And then I got a present. I got a present, and I'm going to show you the present in just a moment. But before I got this present, I rarely, if ever, sat in profile. I had inherited my grandmother's nose. And as a result, I wore my glasses somewhat in the middle of my nose to help diminish its girth to the naked eye. And I was sitting in profile, which I do quite comfortably now. I was sitting in profile with a little boy, and he looked at me and he said, "Gee, Lydia, you got a big nose." And so I said, "You may not strike other people's children." I said, that was what I said to myself. So being the good teacher that I am, I said, "Yes, I do. Let's see how big it is." So I took my glasses off, and we took his adorable little index finger, the one that I held gently, and we laid it over my nose. And you know what? It didn't fit. So we took my index finger, and we laid it over my nose. Sucker fit perfectly. All right, so now I can stand in profile because I helped somebody's child learn to talk, and he just happened to be a plastic surgeon. So, all right, knowing what to say to whom. A 4-year-old says, "Gee, Lydia, you got a big nose." That's okay. But if any of you at 24, 34, or 44 comment on the quality of this rhinoplasty, that would be inappropriate. So knowing what to say, how to say it, when and why. You see, you can talk to other people and get feedback. You know what's hard about doing a talk like this? I can't even see the people in the front row. I need their faces. What's important is to get human feedback. And as you've heard, too much time in front of a screen makes you think it comes at you fast and comes at you two-dimensionally and comes at you flat. And babies don't process that. Neither do little kids. So there's a tidbit of sociology, knowing what to say, when, how, and to whom, because that's what will help you be a friend. Now here's something to think of. The language of school is a different beast. There's the language of instruction. We have relative status in school, and so we have to adapt. This flexible, elastic brain that we have allows us to adapt to the needs of the situation, because you don't have real conversations in school. You have different kinds of conversations. Teachers ask questions they know the answers to, you give the answers. It's a different kind of conversation. Language grows and changes, and you have to have different kinds of language for different situations. This morning, Ron used one that I had never heard before, FOMO, all right, fear of missing out. We now all know LOL, and the new one, YOLO, you only live once, all right. I got one the other day that said, I'm going to translate this for those of you who know it. It came to me as LMAO. I had no idea what that meant. I will change it for you to LMTO. That would be laughing my tush off. I had no idea. Language grows and changes, and you have to be able to adapt. So I hope that this has been a chill presentation and that you all are down with it, all right? I am into it, all right? So, I mean, I've heard my children have that phone conversation. It may sound familiar to you. Yo, I, down, peace. Now, you'll note, should have been this, to which I asked for an explanation. Oh, that was Ben. He asked me if I wanted to come over. I said, yes, see you later. Not, for me it wasn't, all right? Right? Okay. I want you to keep your eyes and your ears wide open. Talk, 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 talk. Listen, 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 listen. These are some things I want you to watch for, because communication patterns are established very early on. Remember, from the minute they're born, they're storing information. I want you to keep that in mind. How you talk in motherese, the way we talk to kids, the things that we can say to children are rather remarkable. You can look at a baby and say the most god-awful things, but if you say it in a lovely intonation pattern, the baby's not going to be upset. You have such a hairy little face. You look just like your grandpa. I'm going to have to say for electrolysis. Baby doesn't know, but the baby's storing sound information. What he's also storing is affect, your emotion. Doesn't make a difference at that point what the words are. He's collecting the sounds. He doesn't need to know those meanings, but we have learned that he is storing that information. Here's what I want you to watch for. We know a lot about very little kids. Children look at you. That's how they engage you to talk. Anytime you see a child avoiding eye contact, that's a little red flag. We've heard a lot about play, creative, dynamic, interpersonal, problem-solving play, solo play and repetitive play. Watch for it. That's something to be alert to. You saw how many words children know, how many words they can use. I love and train pediatricians, but we want to be careful about the he'll outgrow it. Pay attention to the number of words that are being used. And if you got more gesture than you have words past the age of 2, I want you to watch and listen for that. Sentences get longer and longer as the days accumulate. Little kids, by the time they're 2, are talking in short sentences, little tiny sentences. And here's something for all the preschool mommies, the 3s and the 4s, especially the late 3s and 4s. Learning nursery rhymes, learning color names, remembering your friends' names, those are important skills for learning to read. And then, once you get into school, all of school is language-based. How much effort to learn to read and write do we have to make? Is it fun? or I hate it. All right? How many times do directions have to be repeated? And do you get it? And do you understand what you read? I can talk, but if nobody is here to understand what I'm saying, if nobody here understands what I'm saying, I haven't effectively communicated. So reading is, the purpose of reading is for comprehension, to understand. That's how you learned about the Roaring Twenties. And do I have a friend? Can I sustain my attention? And how much do I hate homework? How much do I hate homework? And as we come to the end, here's something for you. Take home. Everybody had numbers, 6 and 8 and 11. I have a few. Talk is not cheap, ladies and gentlemen, because the power of language is invaluable, incalculable. And the coolest thing, you can go home and talk to your kids. You can talk. You can read to them. You can talk at dinner. You can talk when they're in the carriage. You can talk when they're in the bathroom. Whenever you have the opportunity. That's not to say you don't want quiet downtime, but the amount of language to which your child is exposed lays a broader and deeper foundation. In the bathtub, on the changing table, in the kitchen, in the high chair. Chat about what? What you're doing, what he's going to do, what you're thinking, what she thinks about. Not in a steady stream of noise, but the way you would talking to someone who actually could be fully reciprocal. But the baby is reciprocating. You just can't always see it. Don't talk so much that the kid turns you off. All right, that happens too. And try not to talk the way I just talked to that poor hairy infant. Because one of the things that I have learned, when I walk through a school, if you take me through a school blindfolded, I can tell you where the kindergartens are and where the nursery programs are. Because teachers talk in this lilting intonation. No need. No need. Give more intonation when you need it, but talk to them as if they're interesting and what you have to say is interesting. You know why? Because the time goes so quickly. The time just goes so quickly. And the interpersonal interaction of conversation and communication is invaluable. Because what's going to happen later on is this. They're going to go to school, and you're going to say, "What'd you do in school today?" And as all of you know, the answer to that question, even for those of you with advanced degrees, is nothing. Not a single thing. You're going to, nothing. What'd you do in school today? Nothing. All right. Really? Your tuition's $35,000. What? Teacher didn't say a word. All right. Talk is not cheap. Talk about what you're doing, what you're thinking. Beware of this. See where it says questions and comments? I want you to beware. Do not ask a question to which you know the answer. That's not the way to make conversation. It's the equivalent of the old Upper East Side. You come here often? All right. What's your sign? No. Doesn't lead to anywhere. Make comments, because that makes conversation much more readily than asking children a lot of questions. So, what I want you to know is the time is short and the time is now. Talk to them. Provide them with incredibly intense foundations just by being with them. Because before you know it, that's what happens. All right? Now, that's what happens. So, what I'm going to do is tell you this. It would have been so much easier for me. Oh, there you are. All right. To stand down here and talk to you about talking, because then I could see you. I would feel that I could be with you. Because that's what this talking business is about, being with someone. You are changing their brains. You are building their confidence. Confidence comes from skill, you heard. You are interacting in a social, emotional, dynamic way that says, I'm here with you, all right? And the screen doesn't love them, doesn't. So I want you to know that I am a New Yorker and a lifelong Democrat. But when a Republican does something that will serve my purpose and yours, I am not too proud. So I'm going to paraphrase a famous Republican's reference. And he wasn't a bad actor either. And this Republican looked out and he said to a man far, far away, Mr. Gorbachev, come on, take down that wall. And you know what I'm going to say to you while I look right at you? Daddy, Mommy, put down that phone. All right?